Gamers, beware. ABC News has an exclusive first look at a new report about video games sounding the alarm about how users can be vulnerable to fraud and theft online. Our Elizabeth Schulze sat down with the director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau with new tips on how to stay protected.
A new warning for Americans who spend $57 billion every year in the virtual world of video games.
We want to make sure it's not a haven for fraud, scams, and abuse.
Rohit Chopra is the head of the CFPB, the government agency charged with safeguarding Americans' finances. He gave GMA an exclusive first look at a report highlighting how using virtual currencies to buy coveted items like vehicles, weapons, or characters could put real money at risk.
What's pretty obvious is that their financial incentives are for players to spend as much as possible.
I think sometimes it's confusing as to what's real money and what's, fake money.
It's a lesson Michael and Jennifer Ferry's 8-year-old son Joey learned when he unintentionally racked up $4,000 in charges on his parents' credit card.
What was it like looking at that statement and seeing all of those charges?
I lost my mind.
After months of trying, the Ferrys finally got a full refund. But the new report warns gaming accounts often lack the security and protections of traditional bank accounts, leaving them open to hacking, account theft, scams, and unauthorized transactions.
When we have a fraudulent charge on our credit card, we can fight it. Many times you see on these gaming platforms, there's really just finger pointing or not really taking accountability.
The Entertainment Software Association, which represents the video game industry, tells us we are committed to providing players and parents with transparent information and tools to make appropriate choices for themselves and their families, including the ability to manage in-game purchases, limit or block communications with other players, and manage when and for how long their children can play.
What would you say to critics who say it's not really the CFPB's role to be looking at the video game industry?
I think we shouldn't think of this as traditional video games. It's an immersive world where there is its own economy. But what we want to make sure is that it's not just a way to sidestep existing rules.
And Elizabeth Schulze joins us now with more. Elizabeth, but my family's a gaming family. I'm a gamer. My kids are gamers, my son in particular. What do we need to know to avoid that nightmare scenario that you laid out or hacking?
Well, and Terry, we're talking about 212 million Americans who are gamers. This is one of the most popular pastimes for folks. So really, the takeaway from this report is that as people are spending more money in video games, making in-app purchases, you want to try to take some of those same precautions that you would in the real world. These virtual marketplaces are increasingly looking like what we see in the real world, whether that's through the currencies that they offer, through the things that you can buy. And so when you're making those purchases, you want to be conscious about the fact that there is the risk of getting fraud, there is the risk of scams. You want to think twice before you give out your personal information in the same way that you would when you're buying something online that's not through a video game. But it is interesting to me too, Terry, that this is a space that you wouldn't really think about the federal government going into. I mean, regulating the sale of coins or skins on video games is not something that you would typically be the case for a federal regulator. But what they're saying here is because this space has grown so fast, because a lot of money is being exchanged on virtual platforms, it is up to consumers to be educated. And regulators also want to be sure that the rules of banking in the virtual world are not different than the rules of banking in the real world.
That's a great point. So make sure you can trust whomever you're buying from online, whether it's through the video game or anywhere else. Yeah. And obviously, the statistic is clear. 3 out of 4 kids under the age of 18 play video games, including mine. So talk about the challenges parents have in keeping them safe.
Yeah, and we've been talking to advocates out there who say, the solution is not necessarily just to say stop. This is something that a lot of kids are going to do no matter what. And you're not really going to stand over their shoulder as they're watching either. So there are ways you can put parental controls on now, and a lot easier than it has been in the past. You'll have to go in the settings, whether that's on your gaming console, on a phone, on a tablet. You can automatically, when you go into those parental settings, stop or restrict the amount of money that can be spent. So that's one easy way just to make sure that those purchases don't get out of control. And Terry, it was striking talking to that family whose son accidentally spent in 1 month $4,000. He didn't realize that when he was buying virtual coins, that was actual real money. So you can easily stop that by putting those limits in place. The other good hack for people when it comes to just kind of protecting your kids is if you do want to allow them to buy stuff on these platforms, you can link their account not to your credit or your debit card, because it can be hard to dispute these charges through your credit card or debit card company or provider. You can instead link it to a gift card and put a set amount of cash on that. That'll kind of put an automatic transaction limit, and it'll make it so that they know exactly how much they have to spend. They still have the choice to do that, but they can't go over as much that way, Terry.
That is great advice. I'm going to take that. Elizabeth Schulze, thanks for that report. Very helpful. Appreciate it.